This is Jarrod Horak, and in this Breeders' Cup handicapping video, I'm going to preview Breeders' Cup Friday and Breeders' Cup Fridays at Santa Anita Park for Friday, November 3rd, 2023. Now, if you're interested in checking out my Breeders' Cup video that I posted earlier this week, I did a Breeders' Cup Classic early preview, and that's on my YouTube channel now if you want to check that out. If you're interested in my Breeders' Cup full cards, you can head on over to the runawayhorse.com. Those annual 2-day Breeders' Cup full cards you can purchase at the runawayhorse.com on my sales page, Breeders' Cup Week, or you can pre-purchase now or just go over to the runawayhorse.com on my sales page for more details. If you're interested in my Breeders' Cup 2023 handicapping articles, I've written handicapping articles for all 14 Breeders' Cup races. I went through and I did some handicapping angles for each of the races for all 5 Breeders' Cup Friday races and all 9 Breeders' Cup Saturday races, plus other Breeders' Cup articles as well. Go on over to todaysracingdigest.com and you will find all of those articles there. And in the description in this video, I will provide links to my 2023 Breeders' Cup handicapping articles. And now we're going to do a quick preview for Breeders' Cup Friday. The pre-entries aren't out yet. I believe about 10 days before the Breeders' Cup we'll have the pre-entries. And I'll be doing more videos then. I'll be coming through and doing some more thoughts about the 2023 Breeders' Cup races. But let's look at the 5 Breeders' Cup Friday races. I'll give out some quick thoughts for those races. Now, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, so far there's been 5 runnings. U.S. horses have done best, and this year the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint will be run at 5 furlongs on the turf course at Santa Anita Park. Now, in 3 of the runnings, Jarrod Ortiz Jr. and Wesley Ward teamed up to win the Juvenile Turf Sprint. So we'll have to see if Wesley Ward ends up having any runners in the race. And let's see if Jarrod Ortiz Jr. is going to be the rider. Now, speed horses have done well. They've won in 4 of the 5 years. So look for horses that have that early speed that can stay out of trouble in that abbreviated turf sprint. Now, some of the contenders this year, No Name Mets for trainer George Weaver looks like a solid contender, showing a lot of ability. A local horse, Slider for trainer John Sadler, is one that you can look at as well. We'll have to wait for the pre-entries to come out. There's going to be a lot of horses pre-entered for the Juvenile Turf Sprint, I'm sure. Now, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies is a Kentucky Oaks 2024 points race as well, and it will be run at 1 mile and a 16th on the main track. Now, one of the trainers to keep an eye out for in the Juvenile Phillies, Richard Mandella. Now, in the Santa Anitas, I believe they've had at least 10 runnings of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies at that oval. Richard Mandella has won 3 runnings of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies at Santa Anita. Beholder was one of his winners, and it looks like Mandella is going to have the favorite this year. The favorite is probably going to be Tamara. It's a Bolt Doro filly. And Beholder, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies winner for Mandella, is the dam for this one. So Tamara's been outstanding in her 2 races in Southern California at Del Mar earlier this year. And she won the Del Mar Debutante, dominated that one. And she's one to certainly look for. Now, Chattelis, Tamara defeated Chattelis in that Del Mar Debutante. Chattelis came back and won the Grade 2 Chandelier Stakes around 2 turns at Santa Anita Park. And she'll probably be in the race. Candied for trainer Todd Pletcher, the Grade 1 Alcibiades winner, and Just FYI for trainer Bill Mott, Grade 1 Frizette winner. So those are going to be some of the top contenders that you're going to see in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies, but I think Tamara is probably going to be tough to beat for Richard Mandella. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf. Typically, horses can win from overseas, but the edge has been so far to U.S. runners in this race. It will be run at 1 mile on the turf course. Now, one of the U.S.-based trainers that's had a lot of success in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf, Chad Brown, he's won it 5 times, and typically the horses that he does well with are the horses that ran well in the Miss Grillo Stakes. And this year, Hard to Justify for Chad Brown won the Miss Grillo Stakes. So she's going to be a contender in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf. A local hope, Southern California filly, Dreamfire, will probably be forwardly placed. She was first in the Surfer Girl Stakes. And you can probably expect an international field. There's probably going to be more than 20 horses pre-entered in this race. So we'll have to wait for the pre-entries to come out to look overall at the field. but Chad Brown has had success in the past, so Hard to Justify could be one that you have to at least be consider that one a top 3 contender. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile is also a Kentucky Derby 2024 points race. And for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, Bob Baffert's won it 5 times, and he has 3 contenders this year. He has Muth, he has Prince of Monaco, and he has Wind Me Up. Now, Muth and Wind Me Up finished 1st and 2nd in the American Pharoah Stakes at 1 mile and 1/16 on the main track at Santa Anita Park, and that's the distance of this race. And Prince of Monaco, that one hasn't run since Delmar in the Delmar Futurity. That one defeated Muth, and then Muth was able to bounce back and win the American Pharoah Stakes and flatter Prince of Monaco. So Prince of Monaco has a lot of ability, hasn't run 2 turns yet. Muth has, and some other horses that are pointing to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Grade 1 Champagne winner, Timberlake for trainer Brad Cox. Locked for trainer Todd Pletcher was 1st in the Breeders' Futurity. So those are going to probably be the top contenders in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And then finally, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Now this race, so we mentioned in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf that there was an edge to the US-based runners. Same with the Juvenile Turf Sprint. But the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, the edge to the overseas runners. They've done well overall in the runnings of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and it will be run at 1 mile on the turf course. Again, look for an oversubscribed field. I'm sure there's going to be more than 20 pre-entries. We always get a whole bunch of overseas horses pre-entered with a bunch of U.S. runners as well. Now, Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore, that trainer jockey team, 5 wins in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So Aidan O'Brien chips his horses over, and they're typically live, and I'm sure he's going to have some live runners. I think some of the horses that could be pre-entered, Mountain Bear for his barn, Unquestionable, Caboulay is another one that could be in there. So just see if any of those horses are pre-entered. Look for the one that Ryan Moore ends up riding, because that's typically the one that will do well. Now, Charles Appleby, another overseas trainer, 3 victories in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And William Buick is typically the rider that he uses. And Frankie Dettori, who recently, he was going to retire this year, but then he decided that he's going to continue to ride after the Breeders' Cup, and he's going to move from being an overseas rider, and he's going to ride at Santa Anita Park, kind of like he did last winter. He was 3rd in the rider standings at Santa Anita Park last winter, then he went back overseas again. But now he's postponed his retirement. He's going to come to California to ride in the Breeders' Cup, and then he's going to stay and ride at Santa Anita Park over the winter. And Dettori has 2 wins in the Juvenile Turf. And probably the best local hope, or the best U.S. hope, is going to be Agate Road for trainer Todd Pletcher, 1st in the Pilgrim Stakes. And the Pilgrim Stakes has been a race that's been productive for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So some of these angles that I just talked about, the productive races, the jockeys and trainers to watch, they're in my Breeders' Cup handicapping articles that I've written. So again, check those Breeders' Cup handicapping angles articles at todaysracingdigest.com. And again, I will provide in the description in this video a link to all of those. So that's my early preview of Breeders' Cup Friday. Again, keep checking out my YouTube channel. I'm going to keep posting as many Breeders' Cup videos as I can from now all the way up to the Breeders' Cup. I'm going to be doing, as part of my Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks video series, after they draw the post positions, I'm going to do the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies. That video is part of the Kentucky Oaks video series. I'm going to have that one, and I'm going to give out my top choice. And then the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I'm going to cover that video on the road to the 2024 Kentucky Derby video series that I do every year. So check out those videos, all the Breeders' Cup videos, and the other handicapping videos that I do each week on my YouTube channel. Again, my Breeders' Cup full cards. You will be able to find those full cards at therunawayrhorse.com on my sales page, Breeders' Cup Week. And you can also purchase my full cards at todaysracingdigest.com. And then again, check out todaysracingdigest.com for all of my Breeders' Cup 2023 handicapping articles. And that will wrap up this look at Breeders' Cup Friday. I'm going to do some previews for Breeders' Cup Saturday. I'll probably do a part 1 and a part 2 on that one, since there are 9 races. So check out my YouTube channel for all these videos coming up in the coming weeks. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races.